The complete story of Cinderella. The first moment. Once upon a time, in a grand house filled with warmth and laughter, there lived a kind merchant with his beloved daughter. The little girl had golden hair that caught the sunlight and eyes that sparkled with joy. Her mother, gentle and loving, would brush her hair each night and tell her stories of magic and wonder. But happiness, like morning mist, can disappear without warning. When the little girl was still very young, her dear mother fell gravely ill. On her deathbed, she took her daughter's small hands in hers and whispered, "My precious child, always remember to have courage and be kind. No matter what befalls you, if you hold on to these virtues, you will find your way to happiness." With those words, her mother closed her eyes forever, leaving the child alone with her grief-stricken father. The middle journey. Years passed, and the merchant, hoping to give his daughter a mother's love again, married a widow with 2 daughters of her own. But this new stepmother was cold and ambitious, and her daughters were vain and cruel. When the merchant died unexpectedly, the stepmother's true nature revealed itself. The girl, now called Cinderella because she slept by the fireplace, covered in cinders, became a servant in her own home. She scrubbed floors until her knees were raw, washed dishes until her hands were chapped, and tended the fire until her clothes were stained with soot. Her step-family dressed in silks and satins while she wore nothing but tattered rags. Despite her hardships, Cinderella remembered her mother's words. She was kind to the mice that shared her attic room, gentle with the birds that sang to her while she worked, and never let bitterness poison her heart. One day, a royal proclamation announced that the prince would host a grand ball to find a bride. All eligible maidens were invited. Cinderella's stepsisters spent days preparing, demanding that she help them with their hair, their gowns, and their jewelry. "Please," Cinderella asked timidly, "might I go to the ball as well?" Her stepmother laughed cruelly. "You? Look at yourself. You're nothing but a sooty servant girl. Princes don't dance with cinder sweeps." As the carriage carried her step-family away to the palace, Cinderella sat by the fireplace and wept. Suddenly, a warm light filled the room, and before her stood a kindly old woman with twinkling eyes. "Do not cry, dear child," said the woman. "I am your fairy godmother, and you shall go to the ball." With a wave of her wand, the fairy godmother transformed a pumpkin into a golden carriage, mice into white horses, and a rat into a proud coachman. Most miraculous of all, she transformed Cinderella's rags into a gown of silver and blue that sparkled like starlight, complete with glass slippers that fit her feet perfectly. "Remember," warned the fairy godmother, "the magic ends at midnight. You must leave before the clock strikes 12, or everything will return to what it was." At the ball, Cinderella was the most beautiful maiden anyone had ever seen. The prince asked her to dance, and from that moment, he had eyes for no one else. They danced waltz after waltz, talking and laughing as if they had known each other all their lives. But as the clock began to chime midnight, Cinderella remembered the warning. "I must go," she cried, pulling away from the prince's arms. She ran down the palace steps, losing one glass slipper in her haste. The prince picked it up, the only clue to finding the mysterious maiden who had captured his heart. The next morning, the prince declared he would marry whoever could fit the glass slipper. He traveled from house to house, but the slipper was too small for every maiden who tried it. When he arrived at Cinderella's house, her stepsisters squeezed and pushed, but neither could fit the delicate slipper. The prince was about to leave when he noticed Cinderella sweeping in the corner. "What about her?" he asked. "Oh, that's just the servant girl," scoffed the stepmother. "She wasn't even at the ball." But the prince insisted. When Cinderella tried on the slipper, It fit perfectly. To prove her identity, she produced the matching slipper from her apron pocket. The prince's face lit up with joy. He had found his mysterious princess. The wedding day dawned bright and beautiful, with golden sunlight streaming through the cathedral windows like a blessing from heaven. Cinderella, now dressed in a gown of pure white silk adorned with pearls and lace, walked down the aisle with tears of joy in her eyes. She thought of her dear mother and felt her presence like a warm embrace. As the prince took her hand, she remembered the words that had sustained her through all her trials. Have courage and be kind. She had remained true to her mother's wisdom, and now she stood ready to begin a new chapter of her life. The ceremony was magnificent, but what made it truly magical was the love that shone in both their eyes. When the prince placed the ring on her finger, Cinderella knew that all her suffering had led to this moment of perfect happiness. As they emerged from the cathedral as husband and wife, the people cheered and threw rose petals. Birds sang from every tree, and even the sun seemed to shine more brightly. The prince helped his bride into their golden carriage, and as they rode toward the palace that would now be her home, Cinderella looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Mama. I kept my promise." The carriage disappeared down the winding road, carrying them toward their castle where they would rule with wisdom and compassion. And there, surrounded by love and joy, Cinderella and her prince lived happily ever after. In the kingdom they created together, kindness was valued above all else, and no one was ever judged by their appearance or station in life. For Cinderella had learned that true nobility comes not from birth or wealth, but from the goodness of one's heart. And so concludes the tale of Cinderella, a story that reminds us that with courage, kindness, and hope, even the most difficult circumstances can lead to joy. For magic exists not only in fairy godmothers and glass slippers, but in the everyday choices we make to treat others with compassion and never lose faith in the possibility of happiness.